The squad car screeched into Maple Ridge Circle like it was a hostage situation. Officer Thompson emerged, hand on his holster, shouting into his radio about a potential entrapment situation. Behind him, his partner was already scanning the perimeter for signs of danger. The emergency call had come in 40 minutes earlier, frantic screaming, something about a person trapped behind a locked gate, unable to escape, possibly drowning. The kind of call that makes every first responder's blood run cold. What they found instead was 23-year-old Dylan Brennan, shirtless and clutching an energy drink, pounding on the inside of my locked pull gate like he was being held prisoner. His face was red with indignation, sweat dripping down his chest as he rattled the metal bars. "I was just trying to cool off," he yelled at the officers. "This is false imprisonment. You can't just lock people in like animals." From my back porch, I calmly sipped my morning coffee and watched the spectacle unfold. "Dylan," I called out, my voice steady and reasonable, "you climbed over my fence again. I just locked my own pool gate. Let me back up and explain how we got to this point. My name is David Chen, and 8 months ago, I thought I'd found paradise when I moved to Maple Ridge Circle, a quiet suburban neighborhood in a sun-drenched corner of Florida. The houses were neatly manicured, the streets lined with palm trees, and my new backyard was a blank canvas for the in-ground pool I'd been dreaming about since my college days. As a 38-year-old software engineer, recently divorced and craving a fresh start, I envisioned lazy weekends floating in crystal clear water, grilling burgers on my patio, and finally having a space that was mine, no compromises, no chaos. My ex-wife had taken the house in the settlement, along with most of my patience. So this move was my chance to rebuild. The real estate agent had described Maple Ridge as a close-knit community, with a strong HOA, which I naively assumed meant orderly and peaceful. I hadn't counted on living next door to Patricia Brennan, the HOA president, whose personality could only be described as a cross between a drill sergeant and a late-night infomercial host. Patricia was in her late 50s, with a perm that defied gravity and a wardrobe of floral caftans that seemed to multiply like roaches. She ran the HOA like it was her personal fiefdom, enforcing rules with the zeal of a medieval tax collector. On the side, she sold essential oils through one of those multi-level marketing schemes that make your skin crawl when you get an invite to a party. She cornered me within 48 hours of my move, handing me a lavender-scented business card and a 12-page HOA handbook that read like it was written by a lawyer with a grudge. "We're a community of trust, David," she'd said, her smile as artificial as her tan. "Follow the rules, and we'll all get along." I nodded politely, unaware that her definition of community apparently included her adult son, Dylan, treating my backyard like his personal resort. Dylan was 23, lanky, with a man bun that looked like it was holding on for dear life. He lived in Patricia's basement, emerging sporadically to vape clouds thick enough to signal passing ships, blast electronic dance music that rattled my windows, and, as I soon discovered, swim in every pool within a half-mile radius. The first time I caught him in my pool, I was grilling chicken on my patio. 3 weeks after moving in, I'd spent the morning cleaning the pool, skimming leaves, and balancing the chlorine levels, picturing a quiet evening swim. Instead, I looked up to see Dylan doing a lazy backstroke, his neon green swim trunks glowing like a toxic spill. "Oh, hey, Mr. Chen," he called out, not even pausing his strokes. "Hope you don't mind. Mom said the HOA pools are for everyone's use." I blinked, my tongues frozen mid-flip. "This isn't an HOA pool," I said, keeping my voice calm. "This is my private property." Dylan just shrugged, splashed water like a kid in a kiddie pool, and said, Cool, nice pool, though." He swam for another 20 minutes before climbing out, leaving a trail of wet footprints across my patio. I figured it was a what-time misunderstanding. Maybe Patricia had misinformed him about neighborhood amenities, so I knocked on her door that evening, HOA handbook in hand, ready to clarify things politely. Patricia answered in a cloud of eucalyptus-scented mist, her diffuser humming on the counter behind her. "David, what's this about?" she asked, her tone implying I was interrupting something far more important than her son's trespassing. I explained the situation, emphasizing that my pool was private, not a community resource. Her response was a masterclass in deflection. "Oh, Dylan's just a free spirit," she said, waving a hand. "He loves the water. You wouldn't want to deny a young man a swim on a hot day, would you? Besides, the HOA encourages shared spaces." I pointed out the handbook section on private property. but she just smiled and offered me a sample of peppermint oil for stress relief. I left, feeling like I'd just debated a brick wall. The second incident was 3 weeks later, and it was bolder. I came home from a 12-hour coding session to find Dylan and 3 of his buddies hosting what can only be described as a full-blown pool party in my backyard. They dragged my patio furniture into a semicircle, set up a Bluetooth speaker blasting dubstep, and floated an inflatable unicorn in my pool, complete with a beer can balanced on its horn. Empty chip bags littered my deck, and someone had spilled what I hoped was soda on my new teak table. Dylan, shirtless and wearing sunglasses at 7 p.m., waved at me like we were old friends. "Yo, Mr. Chen, you should join us. Water's perfect." His friends, equally oblivious, raised their beers in a mock toast. I took a deep breath, counted to 10, and asked them to leave. "No need to get weird about it," Dylan said, rolling his eyes as he gathered his things. His friends took their time, leaving behind a mess that took me 2 hours to clean. That's when I decided to take action. I ordered a sturdy lock for my pool gate, a simple latch, nothing elaborate, just enough to keep out casual intruders. I installed it myself on a Saturday morning, feeling a small surge of triumph as it clicked into place. I even sent Patricia a polite email, explaining that I'd added the lock to prevent unauthorized access and ensure my privacy. I expected maybe a grudging acknowledgement. Instead, I woke up the next day to a 4-page HOA violation notice taped to my front door. The document accused me of restricting community water access, installing unauthorized fixtures on shared visual property, and creating potential safety hazards through barrier modification. It was written in the kind of legalese that makes you wonder if someone's getting paid by the syllable. Patricia had also posted a manifesto on the neighborhood Facebook group, complete with photos of my locked gate and captions warning that I was endangering children and destroying the spirit of Maple Ridge. The post had 47 comments. By noon, split between neighbors defending my right to secure my property and others parroting Patricia's claims that I was a public safety hazard. The Facebook group became a digital coliseum. Supporters like Mrs. Alvarez, a retired teacher who lived across the street, wrote, "It's his pool, not a public park." Others, clearly in Patricia's camp, posted about community unity and shared resources, as if my pool was some kind of communal watering hole. One neighbor, Karen, suggested I was traumatizing children by locking the gate, which was news to me since no kids had ever been near my pool. Patricia responded to every supportive comment with increasingly unhinged warnings about liability, drowning risks, and the erosion of our neighborhood's values. I tried to stay above the fray, but the absurdity was grating. I wasn't running a swim club, I just wanted to enjoy my own backyard. To protect myself, I installed a set of motion-activated security cameras around my pool area. I'm a software engineer, so setting up the system was second nature, and I figured the footage might come in handy if things escalated further. The cameras were a gold mine. Over the next month, they captured Dylan's attempts to access my pool with the persistence of a raccoon raiding a trash can. He climbed my fence at all hours, morning, afternoon, even to AM once, wearing glow-in-the-dark sneakers that made him look like a budget superhero. The footage was almost comical. Dylan scaling the fence with surprising agility, only to find the gate locked, then pacing like a caged tiger, muttering to himself. He tried shaking the gate, climbing over it, even wedging a stick into the latch. Each time, he'd eventually give up and slink back to Patricia's basement, but not before leaving vape clouds and the occasional energy drinking in my yard. The situation reached a boiling point. On a sweltering Thursday afternoon in July, I was in my home office, debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code, when I heard the familiar thud of someone landing in my backyard. Through my window, I saw Dylan drop from the fence, shirtless as usual, clutching a Monster energy drink. He strutted to the pool gate, grabbed the handle, and yanked, expecting it to swing open. When it didn't, his face cycled through confidence, confusion, and panic in about 30 seconds. He shook the gate, pushed against it, and then started pacing the pool deck, his flip-flops slapping the concrete. I watched, half amused, half exasperated, as he pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "Hello, I need help," he said, his voice carrying through my open window. "I'm trapped in someone's backyard, and they won't let me out. I think I'm being held against my will." He gave my address to the dispatcher, describing himself as a victim of unlawful detention. I nearly choked on my coffee. This was a new level of entitlement, calling emergency services because he couldn't figure out how to open a gate he wasn't supposed to be behind in the first place. The police arrived in minutes, their sirens cutting through the quiet neighborhood like a scene from a crime drama. Patricia wasn't far behind, sprinting from her house in a floral caftan, her essential oil diffuser clutched like a talisman. She'd clearly been in the middle of a Facebook Live sales pitch, her hair slightly askew, her voice hitting a pitch that could shatter glass. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she shrieked, waving the diffuser like she was warding off evil spirits. "That man has trapped my son. This is exactly what I warned everyone about on Facebook." Officer Thompson, a burly man with a weary expression of someone who'd seen it all, glanced between Dylan, still rattling my gate, and Patricia, who was now gesturing wildly. "Mom, can you explain what happened here?" he asked, his tone calm but skeptical. Patricia launched into a tirade about community pools, safety hazards, and my selfish decision to lock my gate. "My son was just trying to cool off on this hot day," she said, her voice hitting dog whistle levels. "He could have drowned." I decided it was time to intervene. I walked out to the officers, introduced myself, and explained the situation. Dylan had trespassed by climbing my fence, and the gate's latch was a simple one he could have opened from the inside if he'd bothered to try. I pointed to the latch, demonstrating its ease. Officer Thompson turned to Dylan, his eyebrows raised. "Let me get this straight," he said. "You climbed over this man's fence into his private yard, and when you found the gate locked, you called 911. Dylan's face flushed. "I didn't know it was locked," he mumbled. "I always use this pool. It's not fair to just lock people out." Patricia doubled down. "Officers, you don't understand the HOA regulations. Community pools are for everyone's use. He's violating our neighborhood agreements." That's when I pulled out my ace, a USB drive with weeks of security footage. I'd been documenting Dylan's escapades, partly for my own protection and partly because I sensed this was heading toward a showdown. I handed the drive to Officer Thompson and offered to show the footage on my laptop. The officers crowded around as I played the highlights. Dylan scaling my fence like a parkour enthusiast, swimming in my pool, inviting friends over, even attempting to pick the lock with a stick. One clip showed him hosting a late-night swim session with glow sticks and a portable speaker, turning my backyard into a low-budget rave. The officers watched, their expression shifting from amusement to disbelief. "Ma'am," Thompson said to Patricia, "your son has been trespassing repeatedly. Mr. Chen has every right to secure his property." Patricia started to protest about HOA rules, but Thompson cut her off. "The HOA doesn't override property law. And filing a false emergency report is a serious matter." The color drained from Patricia's face. Dylan, finally freed from the pool area by simply lifting the latch, argued with the officers about his rights to use neighborhood pools. He seemed genuinely baffled that my backyard wasn't public property. The officers gave him a stern warning about trespassing and advised Patricia to rein in her son. I watched them leave, feeling a mix of relief and vindication. But I knew this wasn't over. Patricia wasn't the type to let a public humiliation slide. The next week was a whirlwind of HOA drama. Patricia doubled down on her Facebook campaign, posting daily rants about neighborhood tyranny and selfish newcomers. She organized a petition to have my lock removed, claiming it violated community spirit. The petition got 12 signatures, mostly from her essential oil customers. Meanwhile, I consulted my racquetball partner, Mike, who happened to be an attorney with a knack for HOA disputes. Mike was thrilled by the saga, calling it the most entertaining case I've ever heard. He drafted a cease and desist letter, demanding that Patricia and Dylan stay off my property and stop their harassment campaign. The letter was polite but firm, citing property law, trespassing statutes, and the potential for civil action. I had it delivered to Patricia's house by certified mail, and Mike told me she signed for it with a scowl that could curdle milk. The HOA meeting the following Tuesday was the climax of this suburban saga. Patricia had spent the week rallying her allies, and the community center was packed with neighbors, some curious, others clearly in her camp. I arrived prepared, my laptop loaded with a curated greatest hits reel of Dylan's trespassing adventures, set to a dramatic instrumental track I'd found online. When the floor opened for new business, I stood up and requested to address the group. "I'd like to clarify some misconceptions about my pool," I said, connecting my laptop to the projector. The room fell silent as the footage played. Dylan, climbing my fence with the grace of a caffeinated squirrel, swimming laps, hosting parties, and, of course, the 911 call where he stood next to an unlocked gate, whining about being trapped. The final clip showed him tossing an empty energy drink can into my bushes, which drew a collective gasp from the audience. I turned to the room. I just want to be clear. Private property means private. I'm not running a community pool, and I shouldn't have to lock my gate to keep uninvited guests out. The silence was deafening. Even Patricia's supporters looked uncomfortable. When the vote came to remove her as HOA president, it was unanimous. Dylan, who'd wandered into the meeting late, munching on a sub sandwich, didn't even raise a hand to defend her. A new rule was passed, clarifying that private pools were private and trespassing would result in HOA sanctions. Patricia was fined $3,000 for harassment and misuse of her position, and she was banned from running for any HOA office for 5 years. Dylan was barred from all HOA common areas, including the actual community pool, for a year. As the meeting ended, Patricia stood, her calf hand bellowing like a sail, and declared, "I'm done with this toxic community." She stormed out, Dylan trailing behind, still chewing his sandwich. I watched them go. Feeling the satisfaction I hadn't known I needed, my pool gate stayed locked. My backyard was mine again, and the new HOA president, Mrs. Alvarez, took my suggestion to install motion-activated sprinklers around the community pool to deter after-hours trespassers. Sometimes, the best revenge is letting entitled people face the consequences of their actions. Patricia paid the fine within 30 days, though she started a blog about neighborhood tyranny that averages 12 views per post. Dylan, I hear, has discovered the YMCA as public pool, where he's free to swim without scaling fences. As for me, I've added a few upgrades to my backyard, a taller fence, better cameras, and a sign that reads, "Private property, no trespassing, my pool is my sanctuary, and I intend to keep it that way." This whole ordeal taught me something valuable. Sometimes you have to stand your ground, even if it means calling out a grown man who thinks a locked gate is a crime against humanity. And if you're wondering whether I ever invited the neighbors over for a swim, the answer is yes, but only the ones who respect boundaries. Life's too short for bad neighbors and unlocked gates.